Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to my podcast. It's now June 6th. I believe this is our fourth podcast on the channel. I'm hoping you guys are enjoying the podcast. If you have any feedback or any ideas for a new podcast to talk about, put a comment down below. In the previous video, I wasn't able to put links to any of the social media, but I put the names to the social media and the website name that you can click, highlight, copy, and paste into a URL bar. But otherwise, let's get to the podcast. Today's podcast is actually about our recent business, updates. Today's podcast is also about newer paranormal, discoveries, new scientific discoveries we've made. Let's get into it. So, as your host, Gabriel Mergenthal, me and my team work together to study the paranormal. And recently, we've kind of made some new discoveries, I guess. Well, they were known to humanity for quite some time, but now they're new to us. We don't know everything in the world, obviously. But we've actually used science that we know now to make equipment to expand science, to learn and do things we've never been able to do because we didn't have the ability to do so. But before I continue on that, let's talk about business updates. As you can see on the screen, if you are watching the screen, which you probably aren't, we now have a new logo for the business. This was designed actually earlier today, and I'd like to say thanks to the design team that actually made this logo. And I'd say congratulations, it's a very nice logo. If you have any thoughts or comments on the logo, obviously comment them down below. Alright, now let's talk about the new discoveries. So recently we've designed a new piece of equipment based on particle physics research that we've done and using the knowledge we already know. So we've actually designed a new PKEM or PKED device, which is a psychokinetic energy detector or psychokinetic energy meter. This device measures and detects psychokinetic energy, typically to detect or measure psychokinetic energy in a certain environment. So let's say I'm inside of a room, inside of this big, scary, spooky mansion, and it will typically detect the PKE or the psychokinetic energy in that room. But if I'm outside in maybe the backyard of someone's house, it will also still do that. A more high sensitivity mode. So typically think of a titanium cylinder. One end is covered in titanium, so kind of think of a little mini titanium cup with no top. And inside that is two zinc plates. One's an anode and one's a cathode. Is then sealed with mica glass or mica glass, typically the glass you will see on your microwave window. Inside this sealed thing is all the air and dust is sucked out, and boron 11 gas is pushed into that tube. So what happens is the cathode is negative. That's the negative end of the power supply. The anode is the positive end. Meaning it's positively charged, and the cathode, which is the negative end of the battery, is negatively charged. So protons go to the cathode. Protons go to the cathode, electrons go to the anode. So what happens is there's a rate meter connected to it, and there's an audio amplifier also connected to it too. And a microprocessor measures all of this. So what's happening in that tube, that cylinder, that titanium cylinder, is when psychokinetic energy is bonded together, when it, I guess, detects it, psychokinetic energy, I believe I've talked about this before, is one proton surrounded by two electrons bonded to more, I guess, pKe molecules or atoms, pKe atoms. In each psychokinetic energy atom is one proton, two electrons. So typically, one bond of pKe is minimum 3 pKe atoms, or in each atom, like I said, is one proton, two electrons. And when those are, quote, detected, it collides with the boron-11 gas, splitting the boron-11 into two types of matter. One's alpha particles and one's boron-10 gas. The neutrons are then slowed down from the nucleus. And then, typically what will happen is the protons will go to the negatively charged cathode, and the electrons of that bond will go to the positively charged anode. And typically, and this is measured by the rate meter, which makes an amplified sound wave that the audio amplifier then detects and measures. This goes to the microprocessor, which processes it. It's my fault. God. Anyways, but then it processes it, and it's typically connected to a display, which will display, I guess, the amount of psychokinetic energy that's being detected by the PKE sensor, or PKES, psychokinetic energy sensor. A second piece of equipment that we've actually are working on and still researching on is a gigameter or a gigameter. Typically, this measures giga electron volts or giga electron volts, or GeVs instead of EVs. And 1,000 EVs or 1,000 electron volts makes 1 mega electron volt. 1,000 mega electron volts makes 1 giga electron volt. And what this is it's a device that will obviously measure giga electron volts, but it measures and detects negative human emotions, or well, it's typically used for that. Typically, your average human is like 1.3 giga electron volts, while something of such high negative human emotion, high power in PKE, is typically around 10 or more giga electron volts. And typically we find this science interesting. And I was actually talking to the guys. I was like, you know how weird it is when we built the proton packs. We had to ionize hydrogen gas to make the protons for the cyclotron. It's one of the steps before the protons are just put into the cyclotron and sent to the particle thrower or the stick or wand or whatever. And you have to ionize hydrogen gas to make protons to send to the cyclotron. And I was like, wait a second. So if we make a device that detects giga electron volts, then how come in the proton packs, when we put the hydrogen gas in a gas tube, a gas discharge tube, we have to use 13.6 electron volts to ionize hydrogen gas. And that is very interesting. I was just thinking about that. I was like, how does giga electron volts kind of refer to or be measured as negative human emotion, while you need electron volts, which is produced by a battery, to ionize hydrogen? I thought it was a weird, I guess, connection. So, well, that was fun. Unfortunately, today's podcast will have to be cut short. But I'd like to say thank you guys all for listening. And if you guys are excited to hear or listen to the next podcast, well, stay tuned by subscribing. If you like today's podcast, press the like button down below. If you have any ideas, suggestions, or thoughts, or comments, comment down below. As always, thank you guys for listening to Gabriel Mergenthal's podcast, and I will catch you guys in the next podcast. Thanks, guys.